Hi, I'm Raegan Sealy and I'm here with award-winning author and spoken word artist Shane Koyczan. We're at the New York Society for Ethical Culture, where Shane's going to be performing this evening. We just thought we would have a quick chat with him about his current tour and work and the poetry world in general. So this is for your UK tour.
Yeah.
And you're doing a lot of UK tour dates this year. You've gone over there and done sort of 2 or 3 at a time, but you're doing like 8 or 9, I think.
Yeah, it's taken a long time to grow an audience out there. I went to the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, I can't remember what year it was, but like trying to get people in the door. And like, granted, you're competing with literally 1,000 other shows.
Happening at the same time.
Yeah, and so it took a long time for people to sort of like tune in into what I was doing over there. And, UK has such a strong spoken word scene. And I think it took a while for my work to sort of catch up over there, because there's a lot of people doing it and doing really good stuff.
Yeah, there is, There's a lot of, I feel like in the US as well, the culture in the poetry scene is quite slam focused, and it's less so in the UK. It's more performance poetry than it is slam poetry. Yeah.
I think slam gives people a forum to try it out for the first time, and that's certainly where I started too. Yeah. When I moved to Vancouver, saw a poster for slam, tried it out, and that really helped me it taught me to self-edit, because all of a sudden everything you want to say has to be distilled into 3 minutes. 3 minutes sounds like a long time until it's not enough time. You know, and but I broke off from slam when I wanted to try different things, when I wanted to do video, when I wanted to do music, when I wanted to explore the limitations of the genre, and I haven't found those limitations yet. There's still a ton of things that I want to do. I want to work with graffiti artists. I want to work there's no limit to the things I want to do. I just need to find the other artists willing to take those steps.
Like many, I love to look at the stars. I love the fact that ours is just one among many. What I love about astronomy is that our constellations tell a story. Our constellations were born from mythology. Mythology was our first attempt to understand the world in which we live. We put a god in everything, and those gods would give us our reasons. Why is the sky blue? Who chose blue? The gods. How come men have nipples? It's the will of the gods. Why does this wine taste so good? There's a god in it.
You do sing a little bit as well. I've heard on a couple of your tracks I heard you sing. Why is that only a little bit? You know, why don't you push that?
You know, when you're young and when you're talked out of things, it stays with you for a long time, and it filters into who you become as an adult. And I grew up being told to be quiet, that nothing I say or think has value or meaning, and a lot of things in my life were shut down because I just wasn't being included in the reindeer games. And you carry that with you as you grow into adulthood. And I think that's the misconception. People think like the way you're treated in school is done when school is over. It informs who you become as an adult.
I remember that I grew up loving mythology. I remember the story of the Titan Atlas, who is also the god of astronomy, the original global positioning system sending sailors safely home by telling them which constellations to keep starboard. He taught us about the stars. He did all this while he held up ours. What
made the difference for you? Like facing all of that, how come you have been able to go on and have this amazing career as somebody who stands on stage and speaks and is listened to?
When I was in university, when I was in the writing program, one of the class assignments was we had to produce and host a poetry competition in the public. It was something, it was an event we had to put on in the public, and everybody had to participate. It was part of your grade. And I really didn't want to do it, but I wasn't about to see, I'm not about to see a blemish on my mark, my academic record. So yeah, of course I'll do it. And everybody else, you know, like, I mean, they did beautiful work, but I don't think they went to maybe the same emotional space that I went to with what I did. And I was able to also at the same time, everybody did they either went fully serious or fully funny, and I kind of tried to do both, because I use humor to deal with my life. I would not be able to deal with a lot of the depression I faced without it, if I wasn't able to laugh at a lot of things.
right down to that first unbearable bee sting, when we learn that this tiny blue marble we call the world has rules. Rule number 1, don't fuck with the bees.
And that single experience, having to go up and like shaky hand, paper, all that thing, and it was the first time people came up to me after a show and related to me on a very personal level, and were vocal about the fact that, hey, that thing that you said about this, yeah, me too. It was that me too moment that made me realize all those people that said I stand alone, that I'm set apart, were wrong. Look at all these people out here tonight who felt the exact same thing. And it's like, I didn't say this forever, because why? Because somebody talked me out of it.
Yeah.
We live in a world where people are constantly being talked out of everything they're supposed to go after. And you wonder why so much of society is depressed. How many amazing musicians are stuck being accountants right now? Because a school counselor can't see a clear path on how to become a successful artist, or how to become an artist for a living. I don't blame them, but it's like, if you choose a path like a lawyer, a doctor, a school counselor can here are the steps you need, these are the classes you need to take, this is the school that's best for this situation, these are, they can give you clear steps. If you want to be an artist, nobody really knows here's how you do it and sustain yourself. School counselors, their job is to make sure that you function in society. But there are too many people in society right now that are maintaining rather than functioning.
We are faced with a seemingly impossible task, and it's okay to be afraid. Our dilemma stands before us like a mountain carved into a blockade. The sheer magnitude of our problem would be enough to dissuade anyone. How do we save the world? We lay in our beds curled into question marks, wondering, what can we do? Where do we start? Is hope a glue crazy enough to hold us together while we're falling apart? The burden seems immense, but we can do this. We must take the martial arts approach to loving our planet, love as self-defense. Forget about the cost. There will be no other thing as worth saving as this. Nothing more important, nothing as precious. This is home. All of our stories start and end here. We are sheltered within an atmosphere that has given us every breath we will ever take. Every monument we will ever make has come from the flesh of our planet. Water like blood, skin like soil, bone like granite. It is not a myth. There is no debate. Facts are in. Fact is, there's never been any question. We are facing crisis. We dismiss the truth not because we can't accept it, but because having to commit ourselves to change is a scary prospect for anybody. The most alarming part of the statement "we are facing crisis" isn't the word crisis. It's the word we, because those two letters take responsibility away from one and rest it squarely on the shoulders of everybody.
I remember when I called my boss and quit my job and explained to him, he's like, "What are you gonna do?" Poetry. There was just silence on the end of the line, and I could hear him thinking, "What are you, out of your fucking mind?" And it's like, of course he's right, of course, but it's like, if I don't try this, then what is my life going to be? What is the point of your life if you're not going to take risks with it?
It's exactly it.
It's like, granted, I'm not going to jump out of a plane, but I'll try poetry for a living. Sure.
It's
the same thing. It's just as dangerous.
But our strength will come from finding a way to share and shouldering the responsibility of turning the impossible into somehow we will do this. We can do this. We can dismiss apathy. We can reject uncertainty. We can be the new chapter in our story. We will not see change immediately. We must act in faith. As the hour hand grips the minute hand and they land on the 11th hour, we must believe like the seed that change is possible. The seed never sees the flower. It grows knowing that it must become more than what it was. It changes because in growth, all of its potential can be unlocked. Change is like rain. It starts with a single drop. Just one.
You're a huge inspiration in that sense, though, because you are one of the most successful poets in the world right now. You do these global tours, you have books, you have shows, you have a huge online following, you have a massive fan base everywhere you go. We're in this empty concert hall right now, but later it's going to be full of 800 people who turn out to hear you read poetry.
I hope it will be.
And I think
will
that's,
be.
to have 800 people show up on a Saturday night to hear poetry is a really rare thing right now. But you attract that everywhere you go. Like, why do you think that is?
I really don't know. I guess for me, what started off as something that was just a forum for me to express my own thoughts and opinions and feelings turned out to be a way to connect with other people and a lot of the things that are on their minds and in their hearts as well. And so people find that connection and they tend to gravitate towards it because it helps them to not feel as isolated.
There's so many of you.
How do you feel about poetry's place in the world in that importance, like within education or within academia or within youth empowerment movements on lyrics?
I think the spoken word or poetry or whatever vehicle you want to call it, it has always helped people relate to either their times or their environment or their political climate. And you start to see, over the past decade, you've really started to see the resurgence of poetry and its importance in the world and how people use it to help understand the world they're dealing with. A lot of the times, an audience will look at other poets. Here's somebody who's saying succinctly what I'm feeling or what I'm thinking, and the world is starved for that sort of lyrical content in this sort of pop generation we've had where, popcorn kept getting fed to us. I think people started to starve for the more lyrical or the more in-depth looks at the world we live in. And so on that level, yeah, a lot of people relate to it. And schools are massively important for that too, because growing up for me, we had the dusty old tomes of poetry where a lot of the other kids weren't able to relate to any of the things that were in there because not only was it in a different vernacular, but it was talking about things that were happening that were in the past, and so a lot of the other kids couldn't relate to it. I personally loved that stuff. I grew up on that stuff, but I understand where they're coming from. And now you're seeing more and more, especially in a world where teachers are constantly, their budgets being taken away for new books. We live in the age of the internet now where YouTube is a really powerful tool and they use a lot of what's out there. I'm not the only poet out there doing this. There's tons of other great works out there that teachers are then able to use to introduce their classes to as a way to express themselves, to get students to express themselves. So in that way, it's always going to have importance in helping others find their voice, in realizing that they can speak out and be powerful and be heard.
When I was 8, I wanted to be a marine biologist. When I was 9, I saw the movie Jaws and thought to myself, no thank you. When I was 10, I was told that my parents left because they didn't want me. When I was 11, I wanted to be left alone. When I was 12, I wanted to die. When I was 13, I wanted to kill a kid. When I was 14, I was asked to seriously consider a career path. I said, I'd like to be a writer. And they said, choose something realistic. So I said, professional wrestler. And they said, don't be stupid. See, they asked me what I wanted to be, then told me what not to be. And I wasn't the only one. We were being told that we somehow must become what we are not, sacrificing what we are to inherit the masquerade of what we will be. I was being told to accept the identity that others will give me. And I wonder what made my dreams so easy to dismiss. Granted, my dreams are shy because they're Canadian.
In particular, your poem, I'm sure you get asked about this all the time, but your poem To This Day, I know of at least like a dozen people who use that in their schools as educators, as a route into to get kids into creative writing, as a route to talk about bullying, as a way to just open up conversation. And it's got something like 20 million views on YouTube now. You don't see that kind of readership in books, and you don't need to have a library membership or even the ability to read to go on YouTube. No. And watch this video, you know? It's a really like universal thing.
I'm not the only kid who grew up this way. Surrounded by people who used to say that rhyme about sticks and stones. As if broken bones hurt more than the names we got called, and we got called them all. So we grew up believing no one would ever fall in love with us. that we'd be lonely forever, that we'd never meet someone to make us feel like the sun was something they built for us in their tool shed. So broken heartstrings bled the blues as we tried to empty ourselves so we would feel nothing. Don't tell me that hurts less than a broken bone, that an ingrown life is something surgeons can cut away, that there's no way for it to metastasize. It does. She was 8 years old. Our first day of grade 3 when she got called ugly. We both got moved to the back of class so we would stop getting bombarded by spitballs. But the school halls were a battleground where we found ourselves outnumbered day after wretched day. We used to stay inside for recess because outside was worse. Outside we'd have to rehearse running away or learn to stay still like statues, giving no clues that we were there in grade 5. They taped a sign to the front of her desk that read, "Beware of dog." To this day, despite a loving husband, she doesn't think she's beautiful because of a birthmark that takes up a little less than half her face. Kids used to say she looks like a wrong answer that someone tried to erase but couldn't quite get the job done. And they'll never understand that she's raising 2 kids whose definition of beauty begins with the word mom. Because they see her heart before they see her skin, because she's only ever always been amazing.
And that is, I guess, more pop, and it's not the same as having these books. Yeah. What's the crossover there? Like, I know you're a huge Leonard Cohen fan, and you had this 2-night sold-out tribute concert you did to him earlier this year. He was, by many, considered a singer, and by others considered a poet, and then by the odd few considered both.
I think where art steered general and wrong was always trying to classify things into genres. That's the problem we've always been facing. And there's people that look at spoken word and they're like, that's not real poetry. I'm not going to debate with you on. I don't need a passport to come across into poetry land to be like, here are my credentials to say that this is what I do. Like, I don't need your permission or your whatever. It's like, I'm going to do what I do, and history is going to tell the world who I was and what I did. Yeah. None of us can say what it was or what it is, you know. But for me, like, I mean, looking at somebody like Leonard Cohen, do I classify him as a singer-songwriter or a poet? I think he was just an artist, and that's what I try to do. Something like To This Day was a project that happened with many artists across many different disciplines. I worked with my band on the music for that, the short story alone. The animation was done by many, many different artists. I like to think of myself as a collaborator. I like to work with other artists across different platforms, across different genres. And I think that's really what's helped elevate my work to it being seen by so many other people. So I'm always grateful when I get a chance to work with somebody new.
We weren't the only kids who grew up this way. To this day, kids are still being called names. The classics were Hey Stupid, Hey Spaz. Seems like every school has an arsenal of names getting updated every year. And if a kid breaks in a school and no one around chooses to hear, do they make a sound? Or they're just background noise from a soundtrack stuck on repeat when people say things like kids can be cruel? Every school was a big top circus tent, and the pecking order went from acrobats to lion tamers, from clowns to carnies. All of these miles ahead of who we were freaks. Lobster claw boys and bearded ladies, oddities juggling depression and loneliness, playing solitaire, spin the bottle, trying to kiss the wounded parts of ourselves and heal. But at night, while the others slept, we kept walking the tightrope. It was practice, and yes, some of us fell. But I want to tell them that all of this is just debris left over when we finally decide to smash all the things we thought we used to be. And if you can't see anything beautiful about yourself, get a better mirror. Look a little closer. Stare a little longer. Because there's something inside you that made you keep trying despite everyone who told you to quit. You built a cast around your broken heart and signed it yourself. You signed it. They were wrong. Because maybe you didn't belong to a group or a clique. Maybe they decided to pick you last for basketball or everything. Maybe you used to bring bruises and broken teeth to show and tell but never told. Because how can you hold your ground if everyone around you wants to bury you beneath it? You have to believe that they were wrong.
I think so many people are like so personally touched by your work as well that it really has meant a lot to them, that it's important for them. How do you deal with any sense of like responsibility that comes with that?
Oh man, It's funny you mention that because I'll be talking a lot about that tonight. I've had to start therapy for it because a lot of the weight that people, I don't want to say unload on you, but a lot of the weight that people unknowingly put on you, whether that's meeting them in person or whether that's, online. The number of letters I get from people that are on their particular ledges or wherever they happen to be in their life is a huge weight. And I write poems. I'm not trained to help you through your particular problem. And it feels awful because saying that, I'm not trying to pass the buck, but all I'm armed with are, here are the numbers, here are the hotlines you can call. I don't know what else to do. It's a lot of weight, and it weighs on me very seriously, and I've had to seek help in dealing with it because I don't know what else to do.
You often asked me, if I had a heaven, what would it be like? And I told you that for such a small word, if, is just too big to wrap my belief around. I would not bend to the hypothetical, but wish now that I would have, even if it was just to ease your mind in the belief that I could be headed to that other place you believed in. I would tell you now how my heaven is here. It was here.
I think one of the things that helps a lot of people is just basic acknowledgement. Even if all I do is, even if all I'm able to do that day is be like, hello, and send a brief message of, and I try, but there are like literally hundreds of messages every day. I can't get through all of them. If I'd have to retire from this and do that full time. I think a lot of the times it just means something to them that I was seen, I was heard, I was acknowledged by somebody else, and that can go a long way. And I think people are dismissive of that in society. A lot of people have the attitude of, well, what could I possibly do to help? You'd be surprised. You really would be.
My heaven would make you laugh. Because I get the feeling you didn't get to do that very much. Through my hell, through the night terrors and bloody noses, through the eyes, black, bruised back, sneak attack, knapsack, and winter coat hijacks, you did your best to seal up the cracks in my armor and made my heaven here. I would have loved to have made you laugh more.
So I'm going to run through these questions. These are the questions I've been given to ask you.
Okay.
So I want some quick fire first.
Should we stop
answers.
and restart, or?
Actually, yeah, good idea. What makes your heart sing?
People. People are hilarious. They're funny. Their stories, the way they react, the things they do to you. Either whether it's fans that come up to you after a show, whether it's strangers you meet, or somebody you see across the street doing a kindness that somebody else doesn't even see. That kind of stuff. It makes me believe in humanity, of course. Yeah.
What makes your heart sink?
People. Same answer. The terrible things they do to each other. We live in a world where, everybody is talking about everybody else, and without consideration that, the things you say are going to come back to the person you're talking about, and what's that going to do to them emotionally. We're inconsiderate in that way. One of the downfalls of society is that as a group, we function almost, there's a tremendous amount of sociopathy when we function together as a group.
What advice would you give your 6-year-old self?
Keep everything, not like to a hoarder level, but keep everything you write, keep everything you create. Everything you create is a landmark for you were here. That the monument to the fact that you existed in the world, that you did something with your life. As crappy as it may be, and there's a lot of garbage that I've created throughout my life. There are terrible ashtrays and shitty macaroni noodle sculptures and just awfulness, but I made those things. It's a monument to the fact that I was here.
Yeah. You changed something.
Yeah.
Even if it was an ashtray.
I affected the world.
So these questions are a little more tricky. There's only 3 of them. Why do you do what you do?
I think for me it's connection. It's finding people of like mind, of like heart, because it is, in as much as that it helps people deal with their own isolation, it helps me deal with mine. It comforts me to know that there are other people out there who maybe aren't facing the exact same situation, but are facing the exact same emotions, or that we feel the same thing.
What do you ask why to most often?
Why I'm doing this. Not this in particular, but why am I doing the thing that I'm doing?
Not this interview.
Right. Yeah, no, not this particular interview, but it's like when I set out on a project, why am I doing this? What am I hoping to achieve? I think one of the problems with the world right now is that people don't ask themselves why. They don't ask themselves what the reason is for a lot of the things that they do. And a lot of the times people don't even stop to consider what it is they actually want out of life. And it's hard because even in school, at such a young age, you're expected to know exactly what you want to do. There's a lot of pressure then when it's like, when an 8-year-old kid says, I want to be a doctor or a lawyer, and then, parents kind of try to, okay, well, let's try to make that thing happen. And then when it doesn't happen, there's all that tremendous pressure of, I failed at this thing. You didn't fail at this thing. You tried it and realized it wasn't for you. What is for you? That question doesn't end just because you didn't become the thing that you first said.
Did you ever think about being a school counsellor? That's not one of the questions.
I don't think I'd be very good at it.
Okay, last question. What are you most looking forward to on your trip to the UK?
Kebabs? No. I think, I really get off on just meeting new people and seeing others perform the art form. There'll be a lot of new voices that I get to hear while I'm over there, and that is always inspiring for me. One of the things about being an artist is the food that sustains us is inspiration. We don't generate that from within ourselves. It's everything that happens around us. It's the world we interact with. It's the other artists we meet. It's the creations that stem from other pains that inform and ignite our own inspiration. And so that is a very important part of touring, and that's what I look forward to. I look forward to being inspired.
I look forward to being inspired by you this evening. I can't wait for the show. So thank you so much for talking to me. I'm going to let you go get ready, and I will see you later.
That's the thing about UK people don't let go, right? They just it was supposed to be a high, never let go.